I knew it was over the moment Preston didn't look up from his phone. That entitled little prince sat across from me scrolling through Instagram while I waited, like I was some contractor he'd called in to fix his Wi-Fi. The name's Jeff Sullivan, by the way, 54 years old, and I just spent the last 31 years at CyberShield Technologies building the very systems that kept this country's digital infrastructure secure. Now this kid was about to optimize me right out the door. His first words weren't hello or thanks for your service. They were, let's talk about streamlining operations. Streamlining. I'd spent 3 decades writing blockchain security protocols that protected NSA cryptocurrency investigations and homeland security operations. This 29-year-old with his Stanford MBA and zero technical background was streamlining me into unemployment. Preston finally put down his phone and opened my personnel folder like it was a takeout menu. Look, Jeff, you've done solid work. Really solid. But you've been here a long time. We need people who are agile, adaptable to our digital transformation. He flashed that shark smile that never reaches the eyes. If you're not comfortable with our new direction, maybe it's time to explore other opportunities. You know the type. Fresh MBA, daddy's money, thinks leadership means using buzzwords like synergy and paradigm shifts. Preston Hayes was the grandson of CyberShield's largest investor and had never written a line of code in his life. But he had that Stanford degree and family connections that got him the CEO chair at 29. I felt this dead calm settle over me. Same feeling I had during my Air Force days when everything went sideways and you had to think fast. I looked at the team photo on my desk. Half those engineers I'd hired straight out of college, taught them everything they knew about secure systems architecture. I remembered staying late with them through critical failures, running on black coffee and gas station sandwiches. I remembered missing my wife's last Christmas because our NSA server farm crashed during a major cryptocurrency investigation. Sarah had been gone 8 months now. Cancer. And now this child was handing me a participation trophy and a termination folder. So I closed my laptop. No drama, no speeches. I stood up, tucked the folder under my arm, and walked out. Past my team, past the glass conference room full of people pretending not to notice. Past the same HR woman who'd once asked me to mentor her son. Nobody said a word. That kind of silence has weight to it. But here's what people like Preston don't understand about guys like me. Sometimes silence is strategy. I didn't go home right away. Went to Murphy's Diner down the street instead. Got myself black coffee, the real stuff, not that artisanal nonsense. And just sat there thinking. Murphy's has those red vinyl booths, waitresses who've been there since the Clinton administration, coffee strong enough to wake the dead. The waitress Dolores recognized me even though I hadn't been there in months, not since Sarah got too sick to enjoy our Sunday morning tradition. "Haven't seen you in a while, honey," she said, refilling my cup without asking. "How's that sweet wife of yours?" I just shook my head slightly. She got it, patted my shoulder, and left me alone. That's the thing about places like Murphy's. They understand grief without making a production of it. CyberShield had been my whole adult life. Joined when we were still operating out of a converted warehouse in Austin, back when defense contractors were scrappy operations run by ex-military guys who understood the mission. Watched us grow from a 20-person shop to a $920 million NSA favorite. And all of it, the infrastructure, the architecture, the core blockchain protocols, had my fingerprints in the foundation. See, I didn't document everything the way some fresh college kid might. I lived that code. It wasn't in a manual somewhere gathering dust. It was in my head, built over years of impossible deadlines and national security emergencies. When the Pentagon needed secure communication channels for Operation Desert Storm follow-up missions, I was the one pulling all-nighters. When Homeland Security needed blockchain tracking for international money laundering investigations, they called CyberShield. They called me. I paid Murphy in cash, walked to my F-150, and drove home through familiar Austin streets. Traffic was light, sun setting behind the hills. My house still smelled like Sarah's lavender candles, even after all these months. I kept buying the same brand, lighting one every evening. Neighbors probably thought I was losing it, but it made the place feel less empty. My old Mustang sat in the garage, half restored, waiting for weekends that never seemed to come. Sarah used to joke that I loved that car more than her. Truth was, working on it reminded me of my dad, who taught me that some things are worth fixing, worth the patience and precision it takes to make them right again. I set the termination folder on my kitchen table, poured myself 3 fingers of bourbon, the good stuff, not the daily drinker, and opened a drawer I hadn't touched in years. Buried beneath tax returns and expired warranties was a slim manila envelope. No label, just the weight of foresight and old military habits. Inside was the original provisional patent application. My name at the top. Not CyberShield's, mine. Filed in August 2009 during one of the company's many chaotic reorganizations, when legal was more focused on staying solvent than minding the intellectual property register. That was the year everything changed. The financial crisis had hit defense contractors hard, and CyberShield was hemorrhaging money. Half the staff got laid off, the other half took pay cuts. I remember working 80-hour weeks just to keep our government contracts from getting canceled. I'd been advised by someone much smarter than me, Chris Walsh, my old Air Force buddy turned IP attorney. Chris and I went way back to basic training at Lackland Air Force Base. He was the kind of guy who read legal documents for fun while the rest of us were playing poker or writing letters home. Smart as hell, methodical, always thinking 3 moves ahead. After our service ended, he went to law school while I dove into the private sector. But we stayed close, met for beers every few months, talked shop about military contracts and intellectual property law. Jeff, he'd said over beers at a dive bar in Austin back in 2009, file it under your name. You can always assign it later once the company's stable and they remember to cut you in properly. The bar was called The Broken Spoke, one of those authentic Texas places with sawdust floors and Shiner Bock on tap. We'd been talking about the chaos at CyberShield, how the company was restructuring every few months, how nobody in legal seemed to know what they were doing. I'd shown him the blockchain protocol I'd developed, explained how it was going to be the backbone of everything we built going forward. The thing is, Chris had said, leaning across the scratched wooden table, in all this reorganization mess, nobody's paying attention to IP assignments. Your work agreement probably has some standard language, but if you file the provisional patent yourself, you maintain ownership until there's a formal transfer. I remember thinking he was being paranoid. CyberShield might be disorganized, but they weren't going to screw over their lead engineer. These were good people, military guys mostly, who understood loyalty and taking care of your own. What if they fire me for it? I'd asked. Chris had laughed, that dry lawyer chuckle. Then you'll own the patent that makes their company valuable. Trust me, Jeff. File it. Include a reversion clause. If they ever terminate you without cause, ownership snaps back to you automatically. I did what he suggested, filed the provisional application under my own name with a very specific clause buried in the legal language. In the event of involuntary termination without cause, reversion of rights shall trigger automatically within 24 hours of formal notice. They never got stable. They just got greedy. And they sure as hell never remembered. Now, sitting in my kitchen 16 years later, I understood exactly what Chris had been protecting me from. CyberShield had been licensing my core blockchain framework the entire time. Every government contract, every licensing deal, every investor presentation was built on architecture that legally belonged to me. I pulled out my phone and called Chris. It was late, but he picked up on the second ring. "Let me guess," he said without preamble. "They finally did it. Preston Hayes, grandson of the biggest investor, terminated me this afternoon for not being agile enough." Silence on the other end. Then, "Did you keep the provisional filing, looking at it right now, and the reversion clause?" "Still there. Still valid." More silence. I could almost hear him thinking, running through legal precedents and patent law in his head. "Jeff," he said finally, "you realize what this means? I've got a pretty good idea. Every line of code they're running, every system they've built in the last 16 years, it's all based on your blockchain protocol. And as of 4:15 this afternoon, they don't own it anymore." The weight of it hit me then. Not just the money, though $920 million in government contracts was nothing to sneeze at. It was the principle. The idea that some kid with family connections could walk in and discard 31 years of service like I was outdated equipment. "What do I need to do?" I asked. "File the reversion notice with the patent office. I'll email you the forms we drafted back in 2009. You've got 24 hours from termination to make it official, but I'd do it tonight if I were you." After we hung up, I sat in Sarah's old reading chair, the one by the window where she used to grade papers when she was still teaching. The leather was worn soft from years of use, still held the faint scent of her perfume. She would have loved this moment, seeing me finally stand up for myself after years of being taken for granted. Sarah always said I was too loyal for my own good. You give and give and give, she'd tell me, but you never ask for anything back. Someday that's going to bite you. She was a high school English teacher for 30 years, tough as nails with her students but gentle with me. Used to edit my technical reports, said they read like instruction manuals written by robots. Tell the story, Jeff, she'd say. Help people understand why this matters. I opened my laptop and logged into the patent office system. The reversion form was exactly where Chris said it would be, sitting in my encrypted email folder like a loaded weapon waiting for the right moment. The timestamp would show 9:47 p.m., well within the 24-hour window. I filled in the details methodically. Patent number 8,847,263. Original filing date, August 15, 2009. Reason for reversion, involuntary termination without cause. Effective date, immediate. My finger hovered over the submit button. Once I clicked it, there would be no going back. CyberShield would discover they'd just lost the legal foundation of their entire business model. Preston would learn that firing the old guy wasn't as simple as he thought. But I thought about that smirk on his face, the casual dismissal, the way he'd scrolled through his phone while ending my career. I thought about Sarah lying in that hospital bed telling me to stop being such a pushover. I thought about 31 years of loyalty and what it had gotten me. I clicked submit. The confirmation came back instantly. Patent ownership had officially reverted to Jeffrey Sullivan, effective immediately. Every system CyberShield was running, every contract they'd signed, every demo they had scheduled. All of it now depended on technology they no longer owned. I poured myself another bourbon and watched the Austin skyline twinkle through the kitchen window. Somewhere across town, Preston was probably at some trendy bar, celebrating his successful optimization of the workforce. He had no idea he'd just handed me the keys to his kingdom. I slept better that night than I had in months, not because of the bourbon, but because for the first time since Sarah's diagnosis, I felt like I had control over something. The next morning came with that particular Austin sunshine that makes you remember why people moved to Texas in the first place. My phone started buzzing around 7 a.m., text from Kevin Thompson in development. Hey Jeff, weird question, but do you know anything about patent stuff? Legal's freaking out about something. I made myself breakfast, real eggs and bacon, not the instant oatmeal I'd been living on, and watched the messages pile up. Kevin again. Never mind, they figured it out. Holy crap, man. Holy crap. Then silence for about an hour. Then my phone exploded. It started with some kid in legal, probably an intern tasked with routine patent monitoring. These fresh graduates, they're thorough in ways that save companies and destroy them in equal measure. Kid was probably just doing his daily check of CyberShield's patent portfolio, making sure everything was still properly registered and owned. Then he typed in patent number 8,847,263 and watched his world implode. I can picture the moment. Kid's probably drinking his third Red Bull of the morning, clicking through USPTO databases like it's social media. Then he sees my name where CyberShield should be, refreshes the page, checks the patent number, refreshes again, realizes he's looking at a corporate extinction event. By 9 a.m., my phone was ringing every few minutes, blocked numbers mostly, probably CyberShield's legal team trying to reach me directly. I let them all go to voicemail, let them sweat a little. The first voicemail was from Preston himself. Jeff, hey, it's Preston Hayes. Could you give me a call when you get this? There seems to be some sort of administrative mix-up with our patent filings. Nothing major, just need to clarify a few things. Administrative mix-up, that's Rich. The second voicemail was from the head of legal, voice tight with barely controlled panic. Mr. Sullivan, this is Janet Morrison from CyberShield Legal. We need to speak with you urgently regarding patent 8847263. Please call me immediately at... By the third voicemail, they'd dropped all pretense. Jeff, this is Colonel Martinez. That got my attention. Stephen Martinez founded CyberShield back in 1994, retired Army colonel who understood what it meant to build something from the ground up. He'd stepped back from day-to-day operations years ago, but his voice on my voicemail meant the situation had escalated to the very top. I just got briefed on the patent situation. We need to talk, not as adversaries, but as two guys who've been in the trenches together. Call me. I finished my coffee, took a shower, and drove over to CyberShield, not to resolve anything, just to watch the chaos unfold. The parking lot looked normal enough, but I could see the tension the moment I walked into the lobby. Employees huddled in small groups, speaking in hushed tones. The receptionist, Maria, looked up at me with eyes wide as dinner plates. "Mr. Sullivan? I thought aren't you—" She fumbled with her words, unsure how to address someone who technically didn't work there anymore but somehow owned the company's most valuable asset. "Just here to clean out my office," I said, which was true enough. The elevator ride to the 4th floor felt longer than usual. When the doors opened, I could see most of my old team gathered around Kevin's desk, probably trying to understand how their former boss had become their legal owner overnight. Kevin spotted me first. "Jeff, man, what the hell is going on? Legal's going crazy, Preston's locked in the conference room, and somehow your name is all over our patent filings." I shrugged. Paperwork catches up with everyone eventually. That's when Preston appeared, looking like he'd aged about 5 years in the last 12 hours. His usually perfect hair was disheveled, his Stanford-branded polo shirt wrinkled like he'd slept in it. The confidence was completely gone, replaced by something that looked a lot like terror. "Jeff," he said, voice carefully controlled. "Could I have a word?" We walked to his corner office, the one that used to belong to Martinez before he retired. Floor-to-ceiling windows, view of the Austin skyline, leather furniture that cost more than most people's cars. Preston closed the door and gestured to a chair, but I remained standing. "There seems to be some confusion about intellectual property ownership," he began, falling back on corporate speak like a security blanket. "No confusion on my end," I said. "Look, I understand you might be upset about yesterday's conversation, but we can work this out. Maybe we moved too fast on the restructuring. Maybe there's a place for you in our new organizational framework." I let him talk. Watched him fumble through corporate buzzwords, trying to find a combination that would make this problem disappear. He offered me a consultant position, then a senior advisor role. Then he started talking about equity stakes and retention bonuses. Finally, he ran out of steam. "What do you want, Jeff?" "I want you to understand something," I said. "Every line of code running on your servers right now, every algorithm processing NSA data, every encryption protocol protecting Homeland Security communications, all of it belongs to me. Not CyberShield. Me." The blood drained from his face. "That's impossible. We've owned that technology for years. Check the patent office filings." As of 9:47 last night, ownership reverted to the original inventor. That would be me. But we have contracts, government obligations. If we can't deliver, then you probably shouldn't have fired the guy who invented the system. Preston slumped into his chair like someone had cut his strings. For the first time since I'd known him, he looked his age. Just a scared kid who'd inherited more responsibility than he could handle. "What happens now?" he asked. I walked to the window, looked out at the city Sarah and I had called home for 3 decades. Now you learn what happens when you mistake loyalty for weakness. The demo was scheduled for Wednesday. CyberShield's downtown conference center, the fancy one with the glass walls and chrome fixtures that cost more than most people's annual salary. I wasn't supposed to be there, obviously, but Chris had connections in the legal community, and word travels fast when a major defense contractor is about to implode in public. Preston had tried to cancel it. I heard this through Kevin, who heard it from someone in marketing. But you don't just cancel a presentation to the NSA and Homeland Security without consequences. These weren't venture capitalists who could be charmed with buzzwords and catered lunch. These were serious people with serious money and serious national security concerns. So the demo went forward, with Preston probably hoping they could bluff their way through somehow. Maybe they thought I'd come to my senses, realize I was hurting my old colleagues, and quietly assign the patent back to avoid embarrassment. They didn't know me very well. I showed up 15 minutes before the presentation wearing my best suit, the navy one Sarah always said made me look distinguished. Walked right into the conference center like I belonged there, which technically I did, since I owned the technology they were about to demonstrate. The audience was exactly what you'd expect. NSA liaisons in dark suits, Homeland Security officials taking notes, a few Pentagon representatives who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. About 40 people total, representing roughly $2 billion in potential contracts. Preston stood at the podium looking like a man facing execution. The color had drained from his face when he spotted me in the back row, but he was committed now. The PowerPoint was loaded, the talking points memorized, the corporate machinery in motion. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, voice steady despite everything, what you're about to see represents the future of secure communications. Our next-gen blockchain architecture will revolutionize how intelligence agencies approach encrypted data transmission. The slides were beautiful, I'll give them that. Slick graphics, impressive statistics, technical specifications that would make any government buyer salivate. All based on my work, of course, but packaged with the kind of marketing polish that makes bureaucrats sign checks. This proprietary system, Preston continued, clicking to a diagram of the core algorithm, was developed by our world-class engineering team here at CyberShield. It represents 16 years of continuous innovation and refinement. That's when I stood up. "Excuse me," I said, voice carrying clearly through the conference center's acoustics. "I think there's been a misunderstanding." Every head in the room turned toward me. Preston's face went white as copy paper. "Jeff Sullivan," I said, introducing myself to the audience. "Lead architect of the blockchain protocol you just saw, and as of Monday evening, the legal owner of patent number 8847263. I pulled out my phone and displayed the USPTO confirmation screen, the one showing my name as the registered patent holder. I was terminated by CyberShield on Monday afternoon. According to the legal clauses filed with this patent, that termination automatically triggered reversion of ownership. The room exploded into whispers. Government officials pulled out their own phones, probably accessing the Patent Office database to verify what I'd just told them. Preston tried to regain control, but his voice came out as a croak. There's been some sort of administrative error." "No error," I said calmly. "Just consequences." An NSA official in the front row stood up, holding printed patent documents. "Mr. Hayes, are you telling us that CyberShield has been demonstrating technology it doesn't legally own?" Preston looked around desperately, searching for support from his team, from legal, from anyone. But they all knew the truth now. Every person in that room understood that they'd just witnessed a corporate meltdown in real time. "We'll need to suspend this demonstration," the NSA official continued, "until ownership issues are resolved." One by one, the government representatives filed out. No shouting, no drama, just the quiet professionalism of people who'd seen bureaucratic disasters before. Within 10 minutes, the conference center was empty except for CyberShield employees and me. Preston slumped against the podium like his strings had been cut. "You've destroyed everything," he whispered. "No," I said. "I've corrected something." That afternoon, I received a call from Colonel Martinez. Not panicked this time, just tired. "Jeff, what's it going to take?" I'd been thinking about that question for 3 days. The answer wasn't revenge, exactly, though I won't lie and say satisfaction wasn't part of it. It was about value, respect, recognition for what I'd actually built. $18 million upfront, I said, 15% ongoing royalties, CTO position with equity, Preston's resignation, and a veteran scholarship program, $500,000 per year, funded by CyberShield. "That's a lot of money, Jeff. It's a lot of technology, Colonel." He was quiet for a long moment. "And if we agree to all of this, then you get to keep using the system that makes your company worth $920 million. And I get to finish the work Sarah and I started." "Sarah?" "My wife. She always said I should stand up for myself more. Guess I finally learned." 2 weeks later, I walked back into CyberShield as Chief Technology Officer. Same building, same elevator, same 4th floor. But everything was different. Preston was gone, of course, along with most of his MBA buddies. The Veterans Scholarship Program was already accepting applications, and for the first time in 31 years, I was being paid what my work was actually worth. I kept Sarah's picture on my new desk, the bigger one by the window. Sometimes I catch myself talking to her, telling her about the new projects, the government contracts we're winning, the young engineers I'm mentoring. She would have loved seeing me finally get the recognition I deserved. But mostly, she would have been proud that I'd finally learned the difference between loyalty and being taken for granted. Some lessons come late in life, but they're worth learning nonetheless. The Mustang's running beautifully now. I finally found time to finish the restoration.